Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into the Islamic concept of Rub, or the divine nurturer.
See a rotting apple? Your brain screams chaos. But is it actually chaotic or something else?
Actually, this framework says natural decay isn't chaos at all. It's perfect order, returning to its origin. This points to a cosmic law of purpose that literally existed way before gravity or E=mc². The big takeaway? Every single particle out there is locked into this foundational law of meaning.
Now, think about this. Our universe is totally built on a binary system. Everything comes in pairs.
This constant duality actually highlights a massive theological point. Only the creator is singularly unique.
So let's zoom in from those massive cosmic laws down to the biological factories in our backyards.
Plants are basically tiny nanotech labs. They use a golden formula to pull amazing scents from dirt.
And you know what? Even our fanciest synthetic perfumes can never truly copy these natural chemical labs.
In this view, a falling autumn leaf isn't dying. It's just a free oxygen factory elegantly shutting down.
This divine nurturing adapts perfectly. Think of a desert cactus, ingeniously storing its own water to survive.
Okay, let's talk physics. Light flawlessly obeys its cosmic command, hitting that exact speed limit every time.
But get this, the source argues there's something else that totally shatters the universe's known speed limits.
It's human consciousness. Our thoughts and faith are completely unbound by physical limits. They're practically instantaneous.
Light needs photons, sure, but consciousness uses emotion, meaning missing someone happens literally faster than light. All this? It's called Rububiyet. It's the continuous, purposeful nurturing of the universe by a divine educator. So what's true submission here? It's simply aligning your own free will with that pre-existing cosmic rhythm.
Stepping outside of this divine framework? Well, that's exactly what sparks true emotional and societal chaos.
And the divine throne isn't about tyranny. It's an authority used entirely to educate, guide, and nurture.
Therefore, attacking human dignity is seen as a direct hit on this deeply invested divine labor. So in a universe driven by such profound purpose, how are you going to use your free will? Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you with us today because we are unpacking a truly mind-bending theological perspective on the universe. We're going to explore a framework from a fascinating source lecture that connects the smallest, most everyday things, like, say, a piece of rotting fruit, all the way up to the cosmic scale of distant galaxies. It's an incredible journey of shifting perspectives, so let's jump right in. Okay, let's dive into this. Think about it. What actually happens when an apple rots? What do you see when an apple falls from a tree and starts decaying? If you're like most of us, you probably just see a mess, right? You see something spoiling, turning to mush, basically creating waste. We naturally tend to look at decay as a breakdown of order, like biological trash that we just want to sweep away. But the source material asks us to pause and completely rethink this everyday occurrence. The speaker makes a really fascinating and honestly highly counterintuitive argument here. We just assume decay is chaos and pollution, but the lecture posits that decomposition is actually a flawlessly organized system, a perfect law. When that apple falls, it's not creating chaos at all. It is triggering a highly disciplined natural response. The source describes microscopic bacteria like an army of disciplined soldiers, arriving on the scene with a very specific mission. They aren't polluting the earth. They're dismantling the apple, piece by piece, to return its matter right back to its origin. So it's a highly regulated cycle of existence and breakdown, meaning that even in decay, there is absolute order.
To help us wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this concept, we're going to follow a quick roadmap. First, the universe's hidden order and laws, then human nurturing and responsibility, followed by the law of duality, nature's flawless production factories, and finally, submitting to the Lord of the worlds. All right, section 1, the hidden order and laws of the universe.
So when we think of universal laws, we usually jump straight to physics or chemistry, right? But according to the source material, the physical laws of the universe are actually secondary. Long before the physical law of gravity existed, and long before the conservation of mass or energy, like E=mc², were established, the Creator instituted the law of meaning and purpose. This suggests the universe wasn't just some random explosion of matter that later happened to develop rules. Instead, meaning was literally the very first law. Every single thing created after that was bound by this foundational rule, that nothing exists without a purpose.
And the lecture takes this idea of foundational laws straight into the realm of physics, specifically looking at the speed of light, which is roughly 300,000 kilometers per second. The speaker frames this not just as a cold scientific measurement, but as a divine command. It's a law of limitation placed on physical matter. But here's the really fascinating twist. While light is bound by the strict speed limit, the source notes that human consciousness, thought, and faith operate infinitely faster. This happens through what the speaker calls psychons, basically units of thought or consciousness that connect instantly across space, totally bypassing physical speed limits. Moving into Section 2, Nurturing Potential and Human Responsibility.
We're shifting our focus down from cosmic speeds to something deeply intimate, our own biology and our absolute need for external nurturing. The speaker makes a super compelling biological argument here. Just having potential does not equal reality. Take the human eye, for example. We're born with it, sure, but the lecture points out that if a newborn's eyes are blindfolded for the first 6 months of life, they actually lose the ability to ever learn to see. The eye has to be exposed to light to be nurtured into functioning. The exact same goes for language. The source references feral children, kids lost in the woods without human contact. Despite having vocal cords and a brain, they never learn to speak because they lack the nurturing environment of hearing language. We literally require constant external nurturing just to activate our most basic human potential.
Okay, Section 3, the law of duality and creation in pairs.
The philosophical view presented in the source is that absolutely everything in existence is bound by a strict law of pairs. The only exception is the creator, who alone is singular. And we see this everywhere. In physics and electricity, the entire system completely breaks down if you don't have both a positive and a negative charge. They are entirely mutually dependent, and biology relies on this exact same rhythmic dependency. The male and female concepts are required for the continuation of life. One simply cannot functionally exist in isolation without the other. Then, the lecture ties this scientific reality directly into profound theology. The argument is that just as light can't be comprehended without dark, even heaven requires the conceptual existence of hell. You just can't have good without the framework of bad. You can't have a believer without the existence of a non-believer. This dual nature proposes that humans and the whole universe we inhabit are never truly independent or self-sufficient. We are always part of this grander interdependent design.
Now, what's really interesting is Section 4, Nature's Flawless Factories. The lecture uses a highly vivid industrial metaphor here, viewing nature as this perfectly calibrated chemical laboratory. Think about a garden where you've got jasmine, sage, and linden planted right next to each other. As the speaker observes, all of these plants are extracting their nutrients from the exact same dirt, drinking the exact same water, and absorbing the exact same sunlight. Yet each plant uses nearly 100 chemical compounds, combining them with a hidden golden formula stored in their glands to manufacture completely distinct scents. The source emphasizes that this isn't just random chance. It's a process measured with nanotechnology-like precision. No human laboratory has ever perfectly replicated these natural golden formulas using raw synthetic materials. It's pretty wild to think about. Building on that industrial metaphor, the source asks us to look at a simple leaf. It's not just random greenery. The speaker frames every single leaf as a heavily engineered, free-of-charge energy factory. It quietly takes in the carbon dioxide we exhale and manufactures the oxygen we need to survive, all perfectly balancing the Earth's atmosphere to match our human sleep and wake cycles. And when the environment changes, the factory adapts. Out in the desert, a plant drops its leaves and turns into a cactus, acting as a vital storage tank, kind of like the hump on a camel, storing its water internally to survive the harsh conditions. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, Submitting to the Lord.
All of this sets the stage for one massive macro-theological conclusion. At the center of this explainer is the theological term Rab. Now, this is often translated simply as Lord, but the source heavily emphasizes that this specific divine attribute actually means the nurturer or the sustainer. It represents the immense, ongoing divine effort put into the universe. It's the attribute of guiding, developing, and maintaining the boundaries of all creation. It's not just about creating something and then walking away. It's about the active, continuous labor of sustaining every single atom. To truly appreciate that effort, the speaker asks us to zoom all the way out. Consider the sheer scale of the universe. The source shares this awe-inspiring statistic. There are roughly 400 billion solar systems just within our own galaxy. And beyond that, there are an estimated 400 billion galaxies in the observable universe.
So the crucial point here is scale and perspective. The speaker notes that if you put the Earth next to our sun, the Earth is like a tiny microbe sitting next to a massive football, and our sun is just one of billions. The goal of this visual contrast is to deeply humble us. We are microscopically small in this vast expanse of space, and yet we are perfectly sustained.
This brings us to the lecture's ultimate thesis, which is captured beautifully in this quote. What should we say about the effort of the Lord of the Throne on humans? To nurture is to give effort. The speaker argues that true spiritual submission, being a believer, isn't born from a place of fear or terror of punishment. Actually, it's born from a profound, overwhelming recognition of this immense divine labor. When you realize the effort it takes to sustain your eyesight, the leaves that make your oxygen, and the galaxies above, submission becomes an act of deep, profound gratitude. And that leaves us with one final provocative question to ponder. How will you respond to this immense effort the universe has invested in you? The next time you see a simple leaf fall to the ground, or an apple rotting in the grass, I hope you look at it with completely new eyes, not as chaos, but as a beautiful, deliberate part of a profoundly nurtured universe. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.
You know, usually when we talk about a rotting piece of fruit, there's this expectation of disgust, or at the very least, this feeling of chaos and finality.
Right, yeah, like it's just garbage now.
Exactly. You see an apple fall from a tree, it hits the ground, it gets bruised, and then over a few days, it turns into this mushy, formless brown mess.
Complete breakdown.
Yeah, and we look at that and think, well, that's just nature breaking down, you know. It's entropy, it's disorder. It's basically the end of the line for the apple, and it looks like a total breakdown of the system.
Right, because from our everyday human perspective, it feels like the absolute opposite of design.
Yeah.
It feels like things are simply falling apart, just kind of surrendering to random environmental destruction.
Exactly. But today, we are exploring a philosophical and theological worldview that completely flips that perception on its head.
Oh, totally.
Suddenly, that rotting apple isn't a symbol of chaos at all. We're looking at a landscape where decay is actually highly orchestrated.
It is the absolute definition of hidden order. I mean, what we perceive as a messy, random breakdown is actually a meticulously governed process.
It's wild. So today's deep dive unpacks the worldview of the Turkish theologian and philosopher Mustafa İslamoğlu. And to really understand it, we're going to step inside his framework.
All right, we're putting on the lens.
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah.
Because the text we have in front of us tackles these massive, universe-sized ideas centered around the Islamic concepts of Rab, which is often translated as Lord or Sustainer, and Rububiyet.
Rububiyet, yeah, which is the active state of that lordship.
Right. It's this idea of divine nurturing, like an ultimate cosmic discipline governing everything from the metaphysical universe all the way down to the physical dirt under our shoes. And just to set the ground rules for today, we're treating his claims about cosmic laws, divine design, and spiritual metaphysics as the literal physics of the room today, just so we can see how this machinery actually works.
Precisely. We are mapping out the architecture of this specific worldview.
Yeah.
By impartially exploring the internal logic of these concepts, we can understand the causality and the underlying mechanisms that are being used to explain existence. I mean, it's about viewing the universe through a very specific, highly structured lens.
Because whether you are prepping for a deep philosophical debate, or you're just insanely curious about how ancient theological concepts map onto modern science, I promise you this deep dive is going to completely reframe how you look at a fallen leaf, a passing thought, or, yeah, that rotting apple.
It changes everything.
It really does. Okay, let's unpack this. To understand how this universe operates, we actually have to start at the end of life. We have to start with decay.
It's the perfect entry point, really, because it immediately challenges our basic assumptions about order and disorder.
Yeah.
In the lecture, the concept of creation and decay is introduced using the Arabic terminology Kevin Vesasat, and the foundational argument here is that both creation and decay are bound by incredibly strict laws.
So decay is emphatically not chaos.
Not at all.
When I was reading this, the example of the apple falling to the ground really struck me. You ate it, or maybe you didn't eat it, but the moment it hits the earth, the decay begins.
Right. Immediately.
But the text frames this as a highly purposeful event. The bacteria are described almost like a microscopic cleanup crew, right?
Yeah.
Whose numbers are known only to the creator.
Yes, they are immediately on the scene.
Yeah, and it's not just that they happen to find the apple. The framework suggests they are already present, like they're already integrated into the cycle of life.
And this is where the mechanism of Rububiyet, that active divine nurturing or discipline, really shows itself. I mean, think about the sheer mechanics of this worldview.
Okay.
The bacteria begins breaking the apple down. They're disassembling it into its subcomponents, carbon, nitrogen, water. But the crucial shift in perspective here is why they're doing it. They aren't destroying the apple, they're dismantling it to return it to its origin. The underlying logic is that everything must return to its essence to be utilized again. The bacteria are essentially processing the apple so that its building blocks can re-enter that cycle of Kevin Vasesset.
It's like a highly efficient automated recycling plant.
Exactly.
That's the analogy that comes to mind for me. Because in our human world, when we demolish a building without a blueprint, it's just a wrecking ball. You smash the concrete, shatter the glass, and you're just left with dust and debris and chaos.
A total mess.
Yeah, a mess that takes years to clean up. But nature's decay, according to this text, is like a crew of highly trained engineers carefully taking a skyscraper apart, bolt by bolt, pane by pane.
Sorting the steel from the glass.
Right. So every single piece can be used to build a new structure. There is no wrecking ball. There is only disassembly.
That is a very accurate way to visualize it, and I think it highlights the stark contrast the speaker draws between this natural decay and human-made pollution.
Oh yeah, the pollution aspect is huge.
Notice how nothing in the natural world pollutes the earth in the way human industry does. You know, you can have a forest floor completely covered in millions of fallen, rotting apples, leaves, dead branches.
It's totally piled up.
Exactly. But if you leave it alone, eventually it clears up perfectly, it becomes rich topsoil. You don't find the old discarded husks of nature laying around like human garbage.
Right, because the natural world doesn't create landfills. It's a closed-loop system. But human actions create actual toxic pollution that doesn't easily return to its origin. So if natural decay is this strict, beautiful order, at what point does human action, like human free will, interrupt that and turn natural order into actual chaos?
That is the pivotal question of this framework, actually. How does the wrecking ball get introduced into the automated recycling plant?
Yeah, how does it?
The answer lies in the concept of Entropy, which translates to divine discipline or nurturing. As long as things operate within this divine discipline, there is no chaos. There's no anarchy. The bacteria, the apple, the soil, they are operating entirely within Entropy because they don't have the capacity to refuse it. Humans, however, have free will.
We have the capacity to step outside of that discipline.
Exactly.
We can choose to swing the wrecking ball.
Yes. When a human being rejects this divine discipline, that is the exact moment chaos is generated. The text argues that anarchy isn't just a political state, it's a fundamental misalignment with the laws of the universe, and it's a cascading failure.
How so? Like, where does it start?
It starts internally. When you step outside of Entropy, you experience intellectual anarchy and emotional anarchy. You lose your internal compass. And from there, it spills outward into your actions, transforming into social, political, and societal anarchy.
So it's not just about, say, littering in a park and causing physical pollution.
No.
It's that the internal rejection of this universal order manifests as external chaos.
Right. And from our perspective, on the ground, dealing with human actions, the consequences are severe. When humans act in service of chaos, those actions turn into a weapon that comes right back to strike us.
It's a self-inflicted wound.
Completely. By deciding to operate outside the closed-loop system of divine nurturing, we generate the very pollution, both literal and spiritual, that poisons our own environment.
Which completely shifts our perspective on decay. Because instead of fearing it or seeing it as a tragedy, this framework demands we view it as a necessary, incredibly orderly reset button.
It's moving toward a goal.
Yeah, it's purposeful.
Yeah.
But that implies that if decay has a goal, then everything Literally, every mechanism in existence
Yeah.
has a fundamental purpose driving it.
Yes, and this brings us to the absolute macro laws governing all of existence. The text makes a profound theological physics claim here.
Yeah, this part blew my mind.
We are moving from the micro-observation of a rotting apple to the foundational code of reality. It argues that long before the physical laws of the universe existed, there was a prerequisite law.
Right, because the lecture states that before the law of gravity was established, before the law of conservation of mass, even before E equals mc squared became the speed limit of energy and matter, there was something called the law of meaning and purpose.
The law of meaning and purpose. According to this worldview, God established this specific law first at the very inception of existence.
Before anything else.
Exactly. It was the blueprint upon which all other physical and metaphysical laws were built. Every single thing created afterward was immediately subjected to this primordial law.
Meaning, nothing is created pointlessly.
Right.
The text references the Quran, specifically Taha verse 50, to anchor this. It says that God gave everything its foundational purpose and then directed it on the exact path required to achieve that purpose. So the universe isn't a random accident that eventually found meaning. It is a structure built entirely out of meaning, which then manifested into physical form.
Because this law was laid down before physics, before matter, it is the inescapable baseline of reality. The text argues that God created the heavens and the earth with truth. And in this context, truth means with profound, deliberate meaning and purpose, rather than as some pointless theatrical exercise.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here, though, or at least push back on how demanding this sounds.
Sure, go for it.
Because conceptually, a universe built on purpose sounds beautiful. But what does this actually mean for our daily routines? The text gives examples of tautologies, actions that only refer to themselves.
Right.
It says, why do you eat? To eat. Why do you sleep? To sleep. Why do you live? To live.
Yeah.
It calls these meaningless, self-referential loops that a true believer must avoid. It calls them Malayani, things that are devoid of purpose.
Yes.
But is the framework really demanding that every single human action carry cosmic weight? Like, if I am just mindlessly scrolling on my phone for 20 minutes after a long day to decompress, is that a violation of the primordial law of purpose?
That is the exact tension this theology introduces into everyday life. It is demanding, yes, but the framework isn't necessarily saying you can't rest or enjoy a moment of stillness.
Might.
It is deeply advocating for intentionality, though. When it criticizes eating just to eat or living just to live, it's critiquing a life devoid of a higher reference point.
But wait, who determines where the line is between resting and numbing? Isn't it human nature to need a little pointlessness just to cope with a universe that is supposedly demanding constant, high-stakes purpose? Like, it sounds exhausting.
That's a very valid pushback.
Yeah.
If you view purpose solely as productivity or constant labor, then yes, it would lead to absolute exhaustion.
Totally.
But the framework defines purpose differently. Let's look at your phone scrolling example.
Yeah.
If you sit down and say, I am exhausted, I need to intentionally rest my mind for 20 minutes so I can be a better, more present person for my family later, that action now has a purpose. It is tethered to a higher goal, restoring your capacity to nurture others.
So the action itself isn't the problem, it's the lack of an anchor.
Exactly. But if you are just losing hours of your life to numb yourself, to avoid reality, to turn your brain off because you refuse to engage with your life, then within this framework, you are violating that primordial law.
Wow.
You are engaging in a pointless action in a universe where pointlessness technically shouldn't exist. The text imagines someone doing something and being asked, why did you do that? And they reply, for no reason.
Which we say all the time.
Right, but the philosophical response to that is, the entirety of existence, from the galaxies down to the bacteria in the soil, is subject to the law of meaning and purpose, and you think you, a conscious being, are exempt.
It completely reframes how you evaluate your own time. If you are feeling overwhelmed or lost in this modern era of infinite distractions, recognizing that the universe has a baseline law of purpose baked into it before gravity even existed, that's a very powerful antidote to nihilism.
It demands that you recognize the gravity of your own existence. It demands participation. The text cites Surah Al-Mulk, verse 3, which challenges the listener to look at the universe and find a flaw, a gap, an imbalance in its purpose. It says you can look twice, you can stare at the cosmos until your eyes hurt, but your gaze will just return to you exhausted, entirely unable to find a lack of purpose in creation.
But if everything has a purpose, and we are part of everything, then the tools we are given as humans must be specifically designed to fulfill that purpose.
Naturally.
We aren't just passive observers, and that leads directly into how we're supposed to engage with this reality.
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because it's not just about physical tools like our hands or our eyes.
Right.
It's about the intellect and this brutal use it or lose it rule of human capacity.
The source makes a very biological and psychological argument here to prove a metaphysical point. It claims that capacities must be actively nurtured to function.
They don't just exist perfectly right out of the box without interaction.
Exactly. The potential is there, but the realization of that potential requires effort and environment.
The example it gives to illustrate this is intense. It says the eye was created to see, obviously, but the eye actually learns to see by seeing.
The physical hardware isn't enough on its own.
Right. The text claims that if you were to blindfold a newborn child for 6 months right after birth, you would effectively destroy their ability to see. The capacity was there, but without the environment of light and the action of processing visual data, the capacity atrophies and dies.
It's a principle of sensory deprivation, and neurologically, it tracks with how neural pathways develop in early childhood. The brain needs stimulus to wire itself correctly.
Yeah.
And the text extends this concept to speech and language. We assume humans will just naturally talk because we have the vocal cords and the brain structure for it.
Like it's just a given.
Right. But the argument is that if you isolate a human entirely, preventing them from ever hearing speech, they will not speak.
The text references the famous 12th century philosophical novel Hey Ibn Yaqtan by Ibn Tufayl, right? Which is about a feral child raised by a doe on an isolated island.
Yes, exactly.
It's a thought experiment about what human intellect can discover without society. But the text also points to real-world cases of feral children lost in forests to prove that capacities like complex speech and societal reasoning only develop through interaction and discipline. Through that concept of Terbi again.
Which is the core mechanism of Rububiyet. The potential, the raw material, is placed inside you as a divine gift, but if you don't actively actualize it, it remains dormant or even withers away.
That's terrifying, actually.
It is. The text notes a tragic reality. Even some adults, because they willingly avoid deep conversation, challenging literature, or intellectual environments, leave their communicative and cognitive abilities at an infantile level for their entire lives.
They voluntarily blindfold their own intellect.
Exactly.
So we literally grow by participating in the friction of reality, by wrestling with difficult concepts, by listening to dense lectures, by engaging with deep dives like this one. We are actively wiring our capacities.
Precisely. Education and nurturing are presented as lifelong, mandatory processes, only ending at the moment of death. And this brings us to the most critical capacities of all, intellect and free will.
The text calls the intellect a trust, an eminent. It says that returning your intellect 0 kilometers, meaning entirely unused, like a brand new car that's never been driven to the creator, is a profound betrayal of that trust.
It's a great metaphor.
Think of it like this. Imagine someone gifts you a multi-million-dollar, state-of-the-art, high-performance sports car.
Okay, I take that.
Right. It has a V12 engine, perfect aerodynamics, and it's designed to grip the road at 200 miles an hour. Instead of taking it out to see what it can do, instead of experiencing the engineering, you just park it in a dark, climate-controlled garage.
What a waste.
Exactly. You leave it there for 80 years. At the end of your life, you hand the keys back, incredibly proud that you didn't put a single scratch on the paint, completely ignoring that the engine has seized up from disuse.
That is a perfect analogy for the text's argument. The creator didn't give you the absolute marvel of the human intellect so it could sit safely in a garage, insulated from difficult questions or hard truths.
Right.
It was given to be driven. It was given to explore the absolute limits of that law of purpose we just talked about. And the text makes a very provocative claim regarding what happens when you do or don't use this intellect.
Yeah, I need you to unpack the mechanics of this part for me, because the language is really striking.
Sure.
It says that if you actively use your intellect and free will, you attract more divine aid. Your capacity expands. That makes sense. It's like a muscle.
Right.
But then it says that failing to use your intellect results in divine aid being cut off entirely. And it metaphorically describes this as God pouring filth on those who refuse to think.
This raises a vital question about causality and punishment in this theological framework.
Yeah, because it sounds harsh.
It does. But when the text references the Quranic idea of filth, or a penalty being poured upon those who don't use their reason, the speaker immediately clarifies the mechanism. He asks, Does God spitefully pour this on them? God forbid.
Okay, so it's not a literal thunderbolt of garbage from the sky punishing you for not reading enough books.
No, and understanding this distinction is crucial to the whole philosophy. The speaker explains that what actually happens is a withdrawal of Rububiyet, the active divine nurturing and assistance.
Okay, so how does that work?
Imagine a trellis supporting a growing vine. If the vine refuses to climb, refusing to use its capacity to reach for the light, the trellis is eventually removed.
Wow.
By cutting off that lordly support, because the human aggressively refused to engage their intellect, the person is left entirely to their own devices. And without that upward divine guidance pulling them toward purpose, the human naturally succumbs to their own gravity.
They plunge their own nose into the dirt. Wow. So by withdrawing the light, you were just left in the dark you chose. The punishment isn't an external attack. The punishment is simply being allowed to experience the natural consequence of your own intellectual stagnation.
Exactly. The human does it to themselves. God simply stops preventing them from experiencing the fallout of their own willful ignorance.
Man.
Therefore, the source urges the listener, if using your intellect brings more of this divine nurturing, use it more. Question things. Analyze the world.
The entire purpose of revelation, according to the text, isn't just to hand you a list of rules to blindly follow. It's to teach you how to use your intellect and your free will at a much higher capacity.
Spot on.
Okay, so we have to use our intellect. We have to drive the sports car. But what exactly is the intellect processing out there on the road? You can't just think in a vacuum.
Right, it needs material.
Yeah, a computer needs data to process. An eye needs light and shadow to see. The intellect needs contrast. And that brings us to the structural reality of the universe that the intellect is meant to observe. The law of duality, and why the universe absolutely requires its counterparts.
In order for the intellect to function, to measure anything, it needs reference points. You cannot measure a single point in space without a second point to establish distance.
That's basic geometry.
Exactly. So the source argues that the ultimate structural reality of the created universe is duality. It calls these the laws of pairs and opposites Esvak and Esdat.
The text cites Surah Ad-Dariyat, verse 49, which says, "And of all things we created two mates. Everything in existence is paired." Everything. And the source makes a massive metaphysical distinction here to explain why. It says, only the creator is singular. Only God is one. Therefore, if something is created, if it is not God, it inherently must have a dual counterpart to exist.
This leads to a very humbling conclusion for the listener. The speaker says, "Oh, human, do not think you are single or unique in the sense of being indispensable. You are not indispensable." Right. Because everything in creation relies on its opposite to have definition, meaning, and function.
It lists off so many physical examples to hammer this home. Upper and lower, male and female, positive and negative, phase and neutral and electricity.
You cannot conceive of one without the other.
Try to imagine a magnet with only a north pole. It literally defies physics.
You literally cannot think of the concept of up without the foundational concept of down. The intellect requires the contrast to perceive reality.
Yeah.
But then the text elevates this from physical geometry and electromagnetism into the realm of moral and spiritual realities. The world and the afterlife, good and evil, truth and falsehood, beauty and ugliness, Adam and Satan.
This is where the text poses a striking philosophical challenge. It says, if you say, "I wish hell didn't exist," you're essentially saying, "I wish heaven didn't exist." If you say, "I wish there were no non-believers," you're wishing there were no believers.
It's a purely structural argument. The dual polarity of existence isn't a flaw in the system. It is a direct manifestation of God's Rububiyet. It is the intentional design.
I have to push back hard on this, though. Does this framework imply that evil is structurally necessary for the universe to function?
Yeah.
That feels like a massive theological tension.
It's a huge one.
Yeah, because if evil is necessary to define good, doesn't that make the creator complicit in the suffering caused by that evil? If I have to experience profound trauma just so I can understand what joy feels like, that seems like a brutal system.
It is a profound theological tension, perhaps the oldest one in existence. But in this specific worldview, the answer to whether the negative pole is structurally necessary is yes.
Wow.
The text argues that the existence of the negative pole is the exact mechanism that gives the positive pole its meaning, its value, and its reality within the created universe.
So it's required for definition.
Yes. Think about the sensory deprivation example again. If you only ever see white light, blinding white light in every direction forever, you are effectively blind. You need the shadow to define the shape of objects.
If there is no shadow, you don't know where the light is coming from.
Precisely. The speaker criticizes those who constantly ask why God allowed Satan to exist, or why God allows people the capacity to deny him or do terrible things.
There's a response.
The response is that without the capacity for denial, there is no value or reality to faith. If humans were programmed to only do good, with no alternative option, we wouldn't be exercising free will. We would just be biological robots.
That makes sense.
The choice of the negative pole must exist for the choice of the positive pole to have any cosmic weight.
So the text says that asking for the removal of the negative pole means you haven't grasped the secret of Rububiyet. You are asking to dismantle the very architecture that allows you to exist as a conscious choosing being.
The speaker advises the listener to accept this lordship, to stop rowing against the current of reality, and to put the wind of divine design at their back.
Put the wind of divine design at your back. Practically, for you listening, that is a radical way to reframe your own life.
It is.
It means that the failures you experience, the severe hardships, the deeply negative moments, they aren't glitches in the matrix. They aren't mistakes that slip past the creator. They are the very structural foundation that allows your successes, your joy, and your meaning to exist at all. You need the descent to understand the ascent.
It demands an acceptance of the totality of human experience as a deliberate divine curriculum.
So we've got these dualities operating within the physical and moral boundaries of our universe. But the text doesn't stop at the boundaries of standard physics. It actually suggests that while matter is trapped by these physical laws, human consciousness has the power to break the ultimate physical speed limit.
This is where things get really wild.
Yeah, which forces us to look at how this theology intersects with theoretical physics and the speed of light.
This section represents a fascinating synthesis of physics and metaphysics. The source takes the speed of light, roughly 300,000 kilometers per second, and frames it not just as a physical constant of the universe, but as an active, ongoing divine command.
Right, it asks a really brilliant question. If the command wasn't given, how would light know to travel at exactly 300,000 kilometers per second?
Exactly. Why not 400,000? Why not 10?
The text argues that without the active, continuous Rububiyet governing it, without that cosmic discipline, every beam of light would just go at its own random speed. Chaos again. But because it receives orders from its origin, it behaves uniformly everywhere in the observable universe.
So light speed is established as the absolute upper limit for the movement of matter and energy. But the speaker then asks, what about speeds that exceed this physical limit? Do they exist?
And his answer is yes. You just have to look at your own consciousness.
He says the speed of your intellect, the speed of your faith, the speed of your consciousness is far, far faster than light because it's not burdened by mass.
That is so...
And this is where he introduces this amazing terminology. He says, light communicates through photons, matter communicates through electrons, but consciousness communicates through psychons, or psykonlar in Turkish.
Now, psychon is a theoretical term sometimes used in the philosophy of mind or fringe quantum physics to describe a fundamental unit of consciousness.
Yes, and the speaker embraces it here to explain how human beings connect on metaphysical frequencies that matter and light simply cannot reach.
It's basically proposing a spiritual quantum entanglement, where two particles, no matter how far apart, instantaneously affect each other. The text gets incredibly poetic here. It says that feelings like love, being loved, missing someone, being missed, these aren't just biological chemical reactions isolated inside your skull. They are active communications traveling across this metaphysical network.
What's truly fascinating here is how it validates human emotion as a tangible, physical, metaphysical force. It elevates feelings from mere psychology to universal physics.
Yeah.
The text states very plainly, if you miss someone, know that they also missed you.
That reframes so much of human longing. It says, maybe you missed them because they missed you first. The signal hit you and you interpreted it as your own feeling. You can stop saying I missed them and start saying they missed me and I felt the ping.
It creates a perfectly symmetrical universe of emotion, reinforcing that law of duality and connection. And then the text elevates this from horizontal human relationships to the vertical divine relationship.
Oh, this part gave me chills.
If it works between two people across the earth, it works between a person and the creator of the universe.
Yes. The text says if you remember God, if you do zikir, if you mention or actively think of God, you can literally flip the sentence. You can say, God remembered me. The host of the universe pinged your consciousness first, and your thought of God was just the echo. The text literally challenges the listener, saying, say God remembered me right now and see if it doesn't give you goosebumps.
And this isn't just poetic license. The source bases this on a foundational theological principle found in the Quran. Remember me, and I will remember you.
Right.
But it also works in the negative, tying back to our earlier discussion of withdrawing the light. The text notes that those who forget God are forgotten by God. And what happens when God forgets you? The text says God makes them forget their own selves.
If you forget the source of the network, you lose your own IP address. You become fundamentally disconnected from your own identity. So this entirely reframes our everyday feelings of loneliness, isolation, or longing. You aren't just an isolated brain in a jar having sad chemical reactions. When you long for connection, or when you feel drawn to the divine, it's framed as a two-way ping traveling faster than light across the fabric of reality. You are part of an active network.
It empowers the listener to view their thoughts and emotions as active, faster-than-light connections to the rest of existence. It makes the internal life a truly cosmic event.
Okay, so we've zoomed way out into faster-than-light spiritual physics and metaphysical networks. But this framework doesn't let us stay in the clouds.
No, it doesn't.
It pulls us right back down to the literal dirt to show us that this invisible cosmic discipline actually manifests in the physical world around us. Let's look at something as mundane as a garden.
Grounding the metaphysics back into the physical world is crucial for this worldview. The source reminds us that the Lord of the worlds is also the Lord of plants, and it makes a very important ecological and theological distinction here to humble the listener. Plants do not produce fruit or flowers for humans.
I love this part because it is so aggressively anti-anthropocentric.
Yeah.
We have this habit of thinking everything is a prop on our human stage.
You really do.
But a tree doesn't grow an apple thinking, I hope a human enjoys this crisp snack. It grows an apple to protect its seeds, to continue its lineage, to survive. A rose doesn't bloom so you can put it in a vase and smell it. It blooms to attract pollinators and reproduce.
However, the text argues that the system of Rububiyet, the divine nurturing, is so perfectly synchronized that while the plant is entirely focused on fulfilling its own survival purpose, the human simultaneously benefits.
Ah, the synchronization.
The creator of the rose's scent is the creator of the human olfactory system. The synchronization between entirely different species is the miracle.
The example of the bee is perfect for this. A bee collects nectar to make honey to feed its hive through the winter. It has zero interest in feeding humans. But the text argues that God gave the bee the capacity and the instinct to make a massive surplus of honey, specifically anticipating human needs.
It's a deliberate surplus engineered into the ecosystem. And then the lecturer marvels at the sheer micro-scale chemistry of the plant kingdom to prove this divine discipline.
Think about a garden. You plant jasmine, thyme, a rose bush, and honeysuckle right next to each other. They are all growing in the exact same dirt.
Right.
The source asks this brilliant, simple question. Have you ever smelled dirt and caught the scent of thyme or a rose? No.
Yeah.
The dirt just smells like wet dirt.
But each plant pulling from the exact same soil, the exact same water, and the exact same sunlight produces a wildly different, highly complex aromatic compound.
The text says they each have a golden formula written in their memory. The roots act like a microscopic chemistry lab. The jasmine plant extracts specific minerals from the mud, synthesizes the sunlight, and weighs the elements on a micron-level scale to create a proprietary chemical formula. You will never see a rose that gets confused and smells like thyme, or a honeysuckle that accidentally smells like jasmine. They never forget their specific golden formula.
It compares this botanical process to highly advanced nanotechnology, and it notes that humans, with all our massive laboratories and supercomputers, have never been able to perfectly replicate these scents artificially without using the natural essential oils as a base.
That's crazy.
The artificial never fully captures the complexity of the natural because the natural is executing a flawless divine mode.
So next time you walk past a jasmine plant, you aren't just smelling a nice flower, you are literally looking at a proprietary divine chemical formula executing perfectly in real time.
And it's not just scents. The text moves on to leaves. It calls every single leaf a miniature, highly efficient energy factory.
Yes, the miracle of photosynthesis is framed here as divine provision. The leaf takes the carbon dioxide that we exhale, which is literally our toxic waste, and uses light to manufacture the oxygen we desperately need to live.
And it does it completely silently, for free.
Exactly.
The text points out that if humans tried to build industrial plants to replicate this process at a global scale, it would cost unimaginable fortunes and probably cause more pollution. But trees just stand there and do it, perfectly balancing the atmosphere, especially while we sleep.
But the Rububiyet doesn't just do one thing everywhere. It adapts to the specific environment. The divine nurturing is bespoke. To understand this, we have to look at how the source connects different ecosystems.
Right.
The text notes that a plant in a lush, temperate zone has broad, flat leaves to maximize sunlight and easily release excess moisture. But put a plant in the middle of a blazing desert, and it changes its survival strategy entirely. Exactly. The text points out that a cactus gives up having broad leaves. Under divine discipline, its leaves evolve into sharp spines to prevent water loss and protect itself, and it stores its water deep inside its own swollen, fleshy body to survive the harsh environment.
And this is where the worldview ties everything together across kingdoms. The speaker connects the cactus to an animal. He says the cactus is the exact botanical equivalent of the camel.
Yes. Think about the parallel adaptation. The creator placed a hump on the camel to store fat and water for the grueling desert crossing. And that same creator engineered the cactus to store water in its base to irrigate its own roots through a drought. It signifies that the exact same divine intelligence, the same Rububiyet, is solving the problem of survival in the desert for both the animal and the plant kingdoms using the exact same underlying strategy.
It is deliberate, synchronized perfection across different forms of life. And recognizing this microscopic, earthy perfection down to the precise chemistry of a leaf and the water stored in a cactus forces us to zoom all the way out.
Yeah, we have to zoom way out now.
If this much attention is paid to a leaf, what does that mean for us? This brings us to our final, grandest realization: the cosmic perspective and the concept of divine effort, or in Turkish, imek.
We have to move from the microscopic chemistry of a garden to the incomprehensible macrocosm of the universe to answer the ultimate question: what is humanity's actual place and value within this massive machinery?
The text sets the stage by reminding us just how impossibly vast the universe is. It notes that our galaxy alone, the Milky Way, has roughly 400 billion solar systems.
Just ours.
Just ours. And in the observable universe, there are at least 400 billion galaxies.
The sheer scale is meant to be deeply humbling, even crushing. The text points out that if you line up the planets, the Earth doesn't even show up next to Jupiter.
Right.
And next to the Sun, the Earth is nothing more than a microbe next to a football.
A microbe. And our sun, massive as it is to us, is just a speck of dust compared to hypergiant stars and other galaxies. So the human being, sitting on this microbe of a planet, orbiting a speck of dust, in one of 400 billion solar systems, in one of 400 billion galaxies, is physically infinitesimal.
We are a rounding error in the math of the cosmos.
Literally.
So what does this all mean? How do we reconcile our absolute physical insignificance with the text's central claim that we have ultimate spiritual significance? How can both be true?
The text bridges this massive gap with the concept of imek, which translates to effort, hard work, or labor.
Okay.
The speaker argues that the Lord of the Throne, representing the ultimate authority of the cosmos, invests an unfathomable amount of limek, of active divine effort, into human beings.
God puts effort into us.
Yes. And the throne, or arsh in the text, doesn't just represent a physical chair in the sky. It represents the ultimate authority to nurture, to execute Rububiyet across all 400 billion galaxies. The fact that the Lord of this incomprehensibly vast system focuses his nurturing authority on a physically tiny human being means that the human being has immense, unassailable value.
The text shares a historical anecdote to really drive this home, and it's incredibly moving. It talks about the Prophet Muhammad. One day, a funeral procession is passing by, and the Prophet stands up out of respect. Someone nearby says to him, "But Messenger of God, the deceased is a Jewish person," implying he didn't need to stand for someone outside their immediate faith community. And the Prophet essentially responds, "Is he not a human soul?"
It is a profound demonstration of universal respect. The text interprets this not just as good social etiquette, but as a deep theological recognition of God's emek.
The effort.
The prophet is standing up out of respect for the divine effort that the Creator invested in building and nurturing that specific human being, regardless of their background or beliefs.
Think about the mechanics of this worldview we've been building today. If the Creator invested cosmic effort into building a person, giving them a purposeful intellect, connecting them to the metaphysical network, sustaining them with the oxygen from the trees, than me despising another human being, stripping them of their dignity, or writing them off because of a mistake.
It's a huge deal.
It's not just a social slight, it is a direct, literal insult to the architecture of the universe.
Exactly. The text explicitly states that looking at a human's mistakes and writing them off is ignoring God's effort. It is an insult to the Creator's labor.
Whoa.
This grants every single human life a profound cosmic dignity. The physical insignificance of our microplanet is completely overwritten by the metaphysical weight of the divine effort invested in us. We matter because the Creator put effort into making us matter.
That is incredibly powerful. Okay, we've covered an immense amount of conceptual ground today, stepping inside a truly intricate worldview.
We really have. To elegantly synthesize this journey, we started by looking at a rotting apple, discovering that what looks like chaos is actually a meticulously governed return to origins through the discipline of Rububiyet.
Right.
We explored how the primordial law of purpose predates the laws of physics, demanding intentionality in our daily lives, even in our rest.
We looked at the mandate to use our intellect, treating it as a high-performance sports car, a sacred trust, so we don't end up plunging ourselves into the dark by returning our minds 0 kilometers.
We examined the structural necessity of duality, how the existence of the negative pole, the shadow, is fundamentally required for the positive light to have meaning and value.
Yeah, that was heavy.
We soared past the physical speed of light to see how our consciousness, our longing, and our spiritual connections operate on a faster divine frequency through psychons.
We walked through the microscopic botanical labs where plants execute their golden formulas to create distinct scents from the exact same dirt, perfectly synchronized with our human needs.
And finally, we zoomed out to the staggering scale of 400 billion galaxies to realize that despite our physical tininess, the active divine effort, the EMIC invested in humanity, grants every single person absolute, undeniable cosmic dignity.
It's a massive paradigm shift, but I really hope this deep dive equips you, the listener, to walk out your door today and view your mundane surroundings totally differently.
That's the goal.
When you see a fallen leaf, you aren't just seeing yard waste, you are seeing a retired, perfectly engineered oxygen factory. When you feel a pang of missing someone, you aren't just having an isolated chemical reaction.
No, you are sending and receiving a faster-than-light signal across a purposeful metaphysical tapestry.
When you face a severe hardship, you are encountering the necessary structural contrast required for your joy to exist.
Everything is interconnected through this specific lens of Rububiyet, weaving together the physical and the spiritual into one unified, profoundly nurtured reality.
And that brings us right back to where we started. We talked about how an apple falling and rotting isn't chaos. It's executing a hidden order, a formula to return to its source. The bacteria know their job perfectly. The jasmine plant remembers its precise chemical formula. The cosmos spins with intent.
It's all moving toward a purpose.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today. If this entire universe is fundamentally wired for purpose and connection, if even the microscopic bacteria in the soil and the thorny desert cactus are flawlessly executing their own golden formulas to survive, thrive, and contribute to the whole, what golden formula is written in your memory, just waiting for you to finally use your intellect to unlock it?
This material explores the Islamic theological concept of Rububiyet, the divine nurturing and sustaining of the universe, by examining the natural order, the cosmic scale, and human intellect as manifestations of a purposeful creator. And I mean, jumping right in, the integration of scientific concepts with theological principles offers a really compelling narrative, but relying on unverified terminology risks undermining the material's core credibility.
Right, exactly. And to understand why that credibility is even at risk, we first have to look at how brilliantly the author establishes it. I mean, the material makes an incredibly strong case for divine order by highlighting these beautifully grounded scientific realities.
It really does. Like, the text asks us to imagine planting jasmine and thyme and roses in the exact same patch of dirt.
Yeah, the exact same soil.
Right, they drink the exact same water and pull minerals from the exact same soil, yet each plant uses a unique, unseen golden formula to synthesize its own radically distinct scent, which is just such a vivid way to frame the natural world as a meticulously programmed system.
And they scale that up so beautifully too. Like, the author doesn't just stick to the garden, they take us out to the cosmos.
Oh, the speed of light stuff, right?
Exactly. Describing the speed of light at 300,000 kilometers per second, not as some random mathematical constant, but as a boundary set by divine command. And then they zoom all the way back down to a single leaf, describing it as a tiny, silent oxygen factory performing photosynthesis while we sleep.
Which is highly effective, right? Because the reader feels anchored. You're using the hard mechanics of biology and chemistry to reflect an underlying cosmic purpose.
You are.
But this is exactly where we run into our first major structural issue. Because after building all of this gorgeous empirical trust, the text steps away from verifiable naturalism and introduces this concept of paisans, or paisanlar.
Yes, the Python issue. So the material suddenly asserts that just as light relies on photons and matter relies on electrons, scientists have essentially invented or discovered the term paisans to prove that consciousness and emotions physically connect minds.
Right, like mutual longing. And they present this highly speculative, essentially pseudo-scientific concept as an established empirical fact.
Which completely fractures the intellectual foundation of the entire section. I mean, think about the psychological whiplash the reader experiences here.
Whiplash is a really good word for it.
Right, because you've just engaged their rational mind with the hard, verifiable science of carbon dioxide exchange and photosynthesis. You've earned their trust as a reliable narrator of the physical universe.
Yeah, you really have.
And then, in the next breath, you ask them to accept a fictional particle as a biological reality.
Okay, but let me push back a little here.
Sure.
Isn't the author just doing what poets and philosophers have done for centuries? I mean, they're trying to create a unified theory of connection.
I see what you mean.
Right, just like gravity tethers the 400 billion galaxies mentioned earlier in the text, they want a particle for love. They want to show that human emotion is governed by universal laws, just like planetary orbits. So are we maybe being too harsh by demanding peer-reviewed science in what is ultimately a theological text?
It's a fair question, and the poetic intent is absolutely beautiful. We definitely want to validate that instinct. But the problem isn't that they are being poetic. The problem is that they are pretending poetry is physics.
Ah, I see.
Yeah. When you write that scientists have discovered something, you are making a factual claim in a text that has trained the reader to look for facts. It's a genre confusion that breaks the spell.
So how does the author get to that unified theory of connection across without breaking the spell?
Well, by shifting the framing. The author needs to move psychons away from literal scientific discovery and reposition it as a philosophical thought experiment. You maintain the exact same structural symmetry without the false empirical claim.
So what does that actually look like on the page?
Well, instead of claiming scientists found this particle, the author could just explicitly invite the reader into a metaphor.
Give me an example.
They could write something like, just as physicists track photons of light, imagine if we could track the energy of human longing, like a metaphysical particle bridging two hearts.
Oh, I like that. By saying, imagine if we could, you explicitly tell the reader, hey, we are shifting into metaphor now. You keep the trust.
Exactly. Or honestly, they could just rely on the brilliantly grounded metaphors they've already established. I mean, they've already set up the soil and the plants.
Right, the roots.
Yeah, why not compare human emotional resonance to the way a plant's root system silently communicates and shares nutrients through the fungal network in the soil?
That would be amazing. It keeps the naturalistic theme perfectly intact without ever crossing into pseudoscience.
And it proves the point just as powerfully. The mechanism of connection doesn't need to be a fake subatomic particle when the real biological world already provides such stunning examples of invisible connection.
That makes total sense. And if the universe is as meticulously programmed as that root system or that jasmine plant pulling its scent from the earth, it forces us to look at how that same exactness applies to human philosophy.
Right, stepping into the philosophical laws.
Exactly. Which brings us to our second point. The material's assertion that duality is a strict requirement for existence provides a clear framework, but it currently bypasses potential philosophical counter-arguments that a deeply knowledgeable reader might hold.
Right. The text moves into this law of duality, referred to as Esvak and Esdat. It argues that everything created exists in complementary or opposing pairs.
Like heaven and hell, or male and female.
Yes, or positive and negative. And the premise is that only the creator is singular. Therefore, duality is the defining characteristic of the created universe.
It's a very clean, structural way to view existence. But there's a moment in the text where this structural elegance hits a wall.
The existential questions.
Exactly. Inevitably, when you bring up heaven and hell, a thinking reader is going to ask, well, why did God create hell or Satan in the first place? And the text explicitly shuts this down.
It really does.
Yeah, it basically says that without these opposing forces, heaven and faith couldn't exist. And that essentially tells the reader not to ask the question, insisting that such inquiries show a lack of understanding of divine nurturing.
Which is such a massive missed opportunity. By simply telling the reader to stop questioning, the material adopts a dismissive posture toward genuine existential doubt. It feels incredibly dogmatic.
But from the author's perspective, they've just solved the equation, right? I mean, they're saying, here is the law of duality. X requires Y. Therefore, don't question why.
Right.
So why is that a problem if the theological conclusion is technically sound within their framework?
Because it contradicts the entire pedagogical philosophy of the rest of the text. Think about the audience here.
Right, they're targeting deep thinkers.
Exactly. This text spends a considerable amount of time praising the use of the human mind. It invites the reader to look at the stars, to analyze the photosynthesis of a leaf, to use their intellect to deduce the nature of the creator.
You are deliberately attracting an audience of deep thinkers.
Exactly. You can't invite someone to the table because of their brilliant, inquiring mind and then slap their hand the second they inquire about something difficult.
Oh, I see. Friction is how learning happens.
Yes. When you tell a deep-thinking reader, don't ask why Satan exists, you are removing the friction. You are alienating the precise audience you're trying to persuade.
So how do we use that friction instead of avoiding it? Because the author still needs to get the reader to accept the necessity of duality.
You validate the questioning first. You use the friction of the counter-argument to actually prove the point about divine nurturing, which the text calls Tedbiryay.
So you're saying keep the conclusion but change the route.
You don't have to change the theological conclusion, you just change the journey of how the reader arrives there.
Can you give me an example of how the author could rewrite that approach?
Sure. Instead of shutting down the question of Satan or hell, the author could lean into it. They could write something like, it is a natural human impulse to wonder why a nurturing creator allows for the existence of evil.
I love that. Just by writing that one sentence, you instantly disarm the reader's defensiveness.
Exactly.
You're saying, I see you and your doubt is valid.
Right. And then you resolve the tension using the text's own recurring theme of capacity and effort. Think about how a muscle grows.
Like physical resistance.
Yes, the author could compare the existence of evil to the physical resistance required to build spiritual muscle. Just as the eye only learns to see by being exposed to light, the human will, the irrade, only learns to choose good by having the option of evil.
That completely reframes it. You're using the duality concept as a mechanism of divine training.
Precisely.
The existence of an opposing force isn't just a raw mathematical requirement, it's the gym equipment for the soul.
That's a great way to put it. The act of wrestling with the doubt is exactly how a person builds their spiritual capacity. This approach respects the reader's intelligence and transforms a moment of doubt into a moment of profound pedagogical growth.
It's fascinating how quickly a text can undermine itself when the tone doesn't match the thesis. And that actually bleeds perfectly into our final major area of critique.
Oh, yes, the tone issue.
Yeah, the text beautifully establishes the divine attribute of nurturing. Yet the abrupt rhetorical shifts towards harsh reprimands disrupt the reader's emotional engagement with that very theme.
This might be the most crucial adjustment the author needs to make, because it directly impacts how the reader feels while consuming the material.
To give some context to our listeners, this text is filled with these breathtaking examples of divine empathy and respect for humanity.
Right.
For instance, it recounts a powerful historical moment where the prophet stands up out of respect for a passing Jewish funeral. The text uses this to prove that God's effort and dignity exists in every single human being.
It's a stunning example.
It really is. It establishes the core message that Rububiyet is about endless, unconditional nurturing. The creator is framed almost like a cosmic gardener, tending to an incredibly vast, delicate garden.
But then we hit this jarring tonal contradiction.
Right.
While the text preaches profound divine love and patience, it occasionally snaps into a scolding, punitive voice.
Yeah, it does.
For example, it states that those who do not use their intellect have filth or pisslick poured over them.
Yeah, that word carries a lot of visceral weight.
It does. And even though the text quickly attempts to clarify that God doesn't literally pour filth, but rather withdraws his grace, the aggressive delivery of the metaphor alienates the reader.
Let me play devil's advocate again, though.
Go for it.
Early in the text, the author talks about an apple falling from a tray. If you leave an apple on the ground, bacteria immediately break it down.
Right, it rots.
It rots. That's a natural law. Actions or inactions have severe consequences in this universe. So isn't a harsh warning sometimes necessary? I mean, if a parent sees a child about to touch a hot stove, they don't whisper sweet metaphors, they yell, "Stop!"
That's a highly relevant comparison, and you're right about the necessity of the warning. But let's look at the psychology of how that warning is delivered.
Okay.
The parent yells because they are nurturing, not because they are vindictive. When a text scolds, the reader's brain literally shifts from a state of receptive curiosity to defensive closure.
So you're losing them.
You aren't just losing the argument, you are chemically shutting down the reader's ability to absorb it.
So the punitive tone triggers a threat response, which closes the mind that the author is trying to open.
Exactly. It fundamentally undercuts the beautiful, empathetic, sustainer persona that the author works so hard to build.
It's a clash of personas.
Right. It jolts the reader out of a state of spiritual contemplation and puts them into a state of defensive anxiety. The delivery of the warning must align perfectly with the text's own definition of decay, or bozuluş.
How so?
Well, the author needs to frame spiritual punishment not as an angry, active retribution, but as the natural, tragic consequence of unplugging from the divine source of life.
Because the text already establishes that the universe runs on these automated systems.
Exactly. The universe runs on elegant systems of cause and effect. The tone of the warning should reflect that same elegant systemic logic, rather than resorting to the rhetoric of a frustrated human punisher.
I see. So we go back to the apple.
We absolutely go back to the apple. Think about how much more impactful the warning would be if it stayed within the biological metaphor.
So instead of the punitive hand pouring filth on the unused mind, how should they rewrite it?
They could say something like, when a person abandons their intellect, it is not that a punitive hand pours filth upon them. Rather, like an apple severs from the branch, they fall out of the nurturing system of Rububiyet.
Oh, wow.
The rot they experience is simply the natural decay of an unused mind.
Wow, that is powerful. Because you keep the severity of the warning, the mind rotting is a terrifying thought, but you remove the petty, scolding tone.
Exactly. It transforms a harsh reprimand into a profound cosmic tragedy. It feels like a natural law of the universe rather than an arbitrary punishment.
And that makes the entire piece feel deeply cohesive.
And emotionally resonant.
It really ties the whole philosophy together. If God is the ultimate gardener, then sin or ignorance isn't punished by the gardener throwing dirt at you. It's just what happens when you uproot yourself from the soil. The consequences are built into the design.
Beautifully put. And that's really the underlying through line for all of our feedback today. Trust the design of the metaphors you've already built.
Well, let's briefly recap the core takeaways from today's analysis. First, to maintain empirical credibility, we suggest anchoring metaphysical concepts in philosophical metaphor rather than literal pseudoscience.
Right, so say goodbye to psychons as a scientific fact and embrace them as a thought experiment.
Or lean back into the brilliant plant-based metaphors already present. Second, rather than dismissing existential doubt regarding duality, use it. Don't tell the reader to stop questioning the existence of hell or Satan.
Validate their doubt and explain how the friction of opposing forces is the exact mechanism required to build spiritual capacity.
And finally, harmonize the punitive warnings with the overarching theme of natural decay. Replace that scolding, vindictive tone with the elegant logic of cause and effect, so that the text's tone remains as nurturing as the concept of Rububiyet it seeks to explain.
I really want to express my genuine excitement about the profound depth of this material. The metaphors are just breathtaking, the scale of the theological vision is vast, and the integration of cosmic physics with spiritual intent is beautifully ambitious.
It really is.
The foundation here is incredibly strong. It just needs a few structural adjustments to truly sing.
We completely agree. We invite the author to apply these structural and tonal adjustments and submit the revised work back to us for another critique.
Definitely.
Until then, we are left to marvel at the idea that whether we are examining the gravity tethering 400 billion galaxies or the unseen formula a rose uses to pull its scent from the soil, the universe is bound by a single, unbroken thread of purpose. Today's submission is a profound philosophical and theological exploration of the divine attribute of Rab, examining how universal purpose, natural law, and human intellect reflect a grand cosmic order.
And since the author is an expert deeply familiar with the material, we're going to explicitly bypass any lengthy praise today.
Right, we're just going to dive straight into actionable, high-level feedback to strengthen the logical robustness and the structure of the work.
Yeah, I mean, to begin strengthening the material, the critique must first address the foundational theological argument regarding divine will and human intellect, as this core logic underpins the rest of the text.
Exploring the mechanics of divine withdrawal provides a fascinating perspective on human free will, yet it leaves the causal loop of human suffering vulnerable to misinterpretation.
I am so glad we're starting here, because I was genuinely struggling to, wrap my head around the logic in this opening section.
Right, because the text makes this really compelling argument that God doesn't actively pour filth or chaos on those who refuse to use their intellect.
Exactly. It's a passive mechanism. God just withdraws his divine support, the Rububiyet, and so they fall into their own chaos.
Yeah, which makes total sense on its own. But then, just a bit later, the text quotes Tikver, Surah 29.
Right.
Which basically says you cannot will unless God wills. And that introduces a pretty severe logical tension.
It really does. Because, if a person's will is entirely contingent on God's will, but God withdraws his support when a person makes a poor intellectual choice,
then who actually made the choice?
Exactly. The reader is left questioning where the ultimate accountability lies. The text just doesn't fully close this loop.
And that leaves a massive gap for critical readers. It makes the withdrawal of divine support look, almost arbitrary?
Right, like a trap. That makes sense, but could the evidence also support a different conclusion if we look at the quote about God's will preceding human will?
What do you mean?
Well, is there a risk that focusing solely on the withdrawal of support might overlook the reader's confusion about who actually initiated the separation?
Oh, totally. We need to clarify the sequence of spiritual cause and effect by adding a brief philosophical buffer that explicitly reconciles divine initiation with human accountability.
Yes. We have to show exactly when the withdrawal of support happens in the timeline of human choice.
Like a strict chronological sequence.
Right, and they can use the apple metaphor they already have in the text.
Oh, I love that metaphor.
It's great. Just as the apple falls and then the bacteria break it down according to natural law, the human mind first rejects purpose and then experiences the natural law of spiritual decay.
So the author just needs to explicitly state that the initial choice to reject the law of purpose is an act of human volition.
Exactly. The human pushes the apple. And when explaining that God cuts off assistance, just add a sentence clarifying that this withdrawal is a natural response to the human's initial refusal.
Not an arbitrary divine preemption.
Right, it's a reaction. The individual's negligence triggers the fall.
But closing that loop is just so critical for the rest of the text to work, because if we establish that God's withdrawal is an automatic natural law, that sets up the scientific arguments later on.
Which brings us to the next point. Grounding profound theological concepts in modern scientific terminology risks undermining the timelessness of the spiritual message if those scientific references are speculative.
The transition into the physical sciences is quite the ambitious swing.
It is. The material beautifully invokes established laws of physics like gravity equals mc squared, the speed of light, to prove that the universe has an inherent, purposeful order.
It's a great setup. Photons and electrons operate on predetermined laws, which perfectly mirrors the theological order.
But then it takes a turn.
A really jarring turn.
The text claims that consciousness travels faster than light and introduces psychons.
Yeah, the psychons.
It presents these psychons as literal subatomic particles through which minds and feelings, like love and longing, connect.
While photons and electrons are proven science, psychons are a fringe speculative concept.
Completely speculative. And blending hard science with pseudoscience like that really weakens the author's credibility.
It's like building a beautiful, sturdy house out of brick and steel and then using papier-mâché for the roof.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
I wonder, though, if we've considered how a scientifically literate reader might react to psychons.
Oh, they'd probably get completely distracted.
Exactly. They get distracted from the genuinely profound spiritual point. So what if we looked at it from the perspective of using strictly poetic language for the soul, rather than trying to force it into a physics textbook?
Establish natural phenomena and frame any speculative concepts explicitly as philosophical or poetic metaphors, rather than literal scientific discoveries.
So basically, just cut the psychon clean entirely.
Yeah. Instead of claiming science has literally discovered psychon particles, they should lean harder into the stunning, factual botanical metaphors they already have.
Oh, the botanical laboratory section?
Yes, where they talk about the golden formula in the plant sap that perfectly synthesizes soil and light into a unique scent.
That part is undeniably beautiful, and it's real science.
Right. Or, if they really want to keep the speed of consciousness idea, just frame it as a metaphysical truth.
Right, not a physics equation.
Exactly. Just say something like, just as photons connect light, our consciousness transcends physical limits to connect hearts.
That works so much better. It doesn't compete with actual physics.
Right. Okay, so we've grounded the theology and the metaphors. Now we need to look at how all these elements are sequenced.
Yeah, the pacing.
Transitioning between the vast cosmic scale of the universe and the microscopic intricacies of nature requires a deliberate pacing strategy to maximize the emotional impact of both.
Because right now the narrative jumps rapidly between the grand macro scale of the universe and the micro scale of earthly biology.
Yeah, 1 second we are looking at 400 billion galaxies.
Right.
And the size of the Earth compared to the Sun. And the next second we are looking at apples rotting or a single leaf acting as an oxygen factory.
Jasmine.
Exactly. And while both scales brilliantly illustrate the concept of Rob as a sustainer, the abrupt, nonlinear shifts can cause, well, cognitive whiplash.
It really does. Bouncing back and forth diminishes the cumulative sense of awe intended by these examples.
R requires a steady buildup.
Is the connection between these scales fully established, or is this an area to potentially bolster?
I think it definitely needs bolstering.
Right now, it feels like watching a film where the director constantly hard cuts between a drone shot of a galaxy and a microscope slide.
Yeah, you just can't process it.
Building on that point, what if we organize this like a camera slowly zooming in from outer space directly into the DNA of a plant?
Oh, that's a brilliant idea. Group the structural metaphors into a clear, directional funnel narrative.
Exactly. Either zoom all the way in from the cosmos to the leaf, or zoom all the way out from the apple to the galaxies.
To build a cohesive, escalating sense of scale, let's look at the zoom-in approach.
Okay, so restructure the flow to start with the grand, undeniable macro laws of the universe.
Right. Lay out the 400 billion galaxies, the speed of light, the immense scale of the sun.
And then you transition into the earthly realm by discussing the dualities of nature.
Like good and evil, creation and decay. The text already has that material, it just needs to go in the middle.
Right, as a bridge. And finally, you zoom in to the microscopic miracles.
The specific oxygen factory of a single leaf, the golden formula of the sage plant's scent, and the bacteria dismantling the fallen apple.
It creates a powerful telescopic journey for the reader. They physically feel the scale compounding.
It turns a scatterplot of facts into a unified, overwhelming argument for purposeful design.
Exactly.
Well, I think we've covered some really solid ground today. Just to quickly recap the 3 main areas of feedback for our listener.
Sure.
First, close the theological loop on free will. Second, separate the hard science from poetic metaphor.
And third, organize the cosmic to microscopic examples into a deliberate zoom effect.
Yeah, to be concrete about those next steps, add a sentence to clarify that human rejection initiates the divine withdrawal. Swap out the Psychon reference for those stronger botanical metaphors, and restructure the examples into that clear funnel we talked about.
Perfectly said. We warmly invite the listener to implement these high-level edits and submit the revised material back to this critique for further review.
Looking forward to reading the next draft.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the debate. Imagine you are walking through a forest in, say, late autumn, and a dried brown leaf falls from a branch to the ground. We usually look at that and think of it as, mere debris, dead weight. But if we shift our perspective to the framework we are exploring today, that leaf, what is referred to as gazelle or zeeble, is not garbage at all. It's a perfectly executed line of cosmic code.
Right, it represents the end of a highly deliberate cycle. We are so used to thinking of nature as this wild, untamed, almost accidental thing. But the perspective here asks us to view it as an exquisitely governed system where, honestly, nothing happens by chance.
Precisely. So today, we are examining the profound concept of Rububiyet, which translates to divine lordship, nurturing, and sustaining.
And how it supposedly governs the entire universe.
Exactly. We are looking at a proposed law of meaning and purpose that dictates all of creation. And we are talking about a scale that is almost incomprehensible. I mean, from the microscopic machinery of that single falling leaf to the vastness of 400 billion galaxies.
It's massive.
It really is. And the core tension we are debating today is the true nature of this divine order. I will be arguing that we are looking at a strictly deterministic, inescapable cosmic program, where absolutely everything is pre-programmed with purpose and subjected to a flawless design.
And I will contend that while the physical backdrop is indeed highly ordered, the true heart of this philosophy frames existence as a conditional, participatory framework. It is a process of tarbiyya, meaning nurturing and training. In this view, potential is not a guarantee. It is a fragile opportunity that must be actively engaged by conscious beings, lest it be wasted entirely.
Let me start by laying out the foundational architecture of reality here, because it makes a sweeping, absolute claim. Before any physical laws existed, before gravity pulled that leaf to the ground, before the conservation of mass, even before E=mc², this law of meaning and purpose was already established.
So the laws of physics are secondary.
Entirely secondary. Everything that followed was subjected to it.
And you see this as an entirely closed, inescapable loop?
I do, yeah. Look at the strict binary nature of the universe, positive and negative charges, male and female, upper and lower. Everything created is bound by this dualistic limitation. Even the speed of light is not some random physical occurrence.
Right. It's constant.
But it's fixed at roughly 300,000 kilometers per second by direct command. Every photon obeys. What we are looking at is a deterministic cosmic law, where no atom is free to deviate from its assigned purpose.
Well, I come at it from a different way. I don't deny those physical boundaries, of course. But if you focus solely on the deterministic physics, you miss the entire tragedy and triumph of the human condition that this framework builds toward.
How so? If the physical laws are absolute, shouldn't biological and conscious laws follow suit? I mean, aren't we just made of these same atoms?
We are, but biology itself proves that potential requires participation. The central thesis is tarbiyya, and tarbiyya is not just creation. It is a continuous, conditional process of realizing potential. Potential is not destiny. Think about a newborn baby.
Okay.
If a baby is born with perfect eyes, but you blindfold that child for the first 6 months of life, the brain actually prunes those neural pathways.
Oh, wow, yeah.
They will permanently lose the ability to see. The capacity was perfectly coded in their DNA, but without the interaction with light, the potential it dies. The same goes for human speech.
So you are talking about cases of extreme isolation, right?
Exactly. Like the classic philosophical thought experiment of Hay ibn Yaqdan, or actual historical cases of feral children. A human isolated in the woods, never hearing speech, will not speak despite having perfect vocal cords. Human capacities are not pre-programmed inevitabilities like, a planet's orbit.
Right, they have to be activated.
Activated and nurtured. A person can literally return their God-given capacities at 0 kilometers completely unused. And that is framed in the text as a betrayal of trust.
A betrayal?
Yes, because if the system were purely deterministic, betrayal would be impossible. You can't betray a machine, you are merely a gear inside of. The system fundamentally requires our active, vulnerable participation.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. Even when things appear to break down, or when a capacity isn't used, the overarching law remains in absolute control. Let's look at the nature of decay and chaos.
Okay.
Take the example of an apple falling to the ground. When it rots, we perceive that as destruction, a breakdown of order.
Wait, I have to stop you there. When I see an apple rotting into a puddle of brown sludge, that looks exactly like chaos. It is literally decomposing. How can you argue that is an ordered process?
Because decay or feset is not chaos in this framework. The moment that apple falls, an army of bacteria that was already present, waiting in the wings, sets to work.
Right, the biological breakdown.
Yes, but they don't just randomly destroy it, they dismantle the apple to return it to its elemental origins. They are a highly specialized deconstruction crew working off a blueprint. Nature never pollutes itself. It is a perfectly closed, autonomous recycling center.
So you're saying the rot is by design?
Exactly. The breakdown is just as programmed as the growth. There is no actual chaos in the natural world. There is only a transition governed by this law of meaning and purpose.
Okay, I can accept the biological mechanism of the apple, but you are ignoring the stark distinction made regarding human beings. Humans can and do create actual chaos.
Really? In what sense?
Well, when human beings step outside this divine discipline, when they reject the Tedbiryay we were just talking about, they trigger internal and external anarchy.
What kind of anarchy?
Intellectual anarchy, emotional anarchy, which inevitably bleeds into social and political anarchy. This happens when people engage in tautological behaviors.
Tautological meaning what exactly in this context?
Meaning they are just running on a hamster wheel, eating just for the sake of eating, surviving just for the sake of surviving, without any actual destination or higher purpose. Mindless scrolling, living a completely unexamined life on autopilot.
Ah, I see.
When humans act without meaning, they actively disrupt the harmony of the universe. If a human can introduce genuine chaos into the world by choosing to live an unexamined life, then the law governing us cannot be an absolute, unyielding, deterministic track. It is conditional on our alignment with it.
That is an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. Even that human-created anarchy is described as ultimately being subject to divine laws of decay within the macro whole. Think of it like a self-correcting immune system.
An immune system? How does that work?
Yes. When human actions serve chaos, they eventually turn into a weapon that strikes the chaos maker. The human might think they are acting outside the law, creating independent anarchy, but the universe simply absorbs that rebellion.
So the universe fights back?
Exactly. The consequences naturally destroy the instigator, whether that is a society collapsing under its own greed or an individual burning out from a lack of purpose. This preserves the macro order. The overarching deterministic law isn't broken by human rebellion, it simply enforces its penalty clauses.
But if the universe just absorbs our chaos like an immune system, then why are human beings designed so differently than the rest of nature? That brings up the stark contrast between how a plant grows and how a human mind develops. You mentioned the botanical evidence earlier, and the mechanics of it are staggering.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about leaves acting as tiny factories using nanotechnology to mix elements by the micron.
Right.
You can plant thyme, jasmine, and linden in the exact same plot of dirt. They drink the exact same water, absorb the exact same sunlight, and yet in their microscopic root laboratories, they pull specific minerals to synthesize entirely different, flawless scents.
It's incredible to think about.
It is. The jasmine never accidentally smells like thyme. It holds a golden formula in its memory that it executes perfectly. Or consider the cactus, adapting its leaves into thorns to store water in the desert, acting precisely like a botanical camel. This is an active, inescapable intelligence guiding biological development. The plant has no choice but to be perfect.
Yes, exactly. The plant has no choice. But contrast that absolute botanical determinism with the terrifying fragility of human faculties.
Fragility?
Yeah, because having the physical apparatus for a skill guarantees absolutely nothing for a human. We don't have a golden formula that just activates automatically. Tarbiyya is a lifelong, grueling process. We only develop our intellect and our capacity for reason through friction.
Through friction?
Yeah, through conversation, through study, through active engagement with difficult ideas.
And what happens when we don't engage? When we just, coast?
The framework makes a profound theological claim here. If human reason and will are not actively utilized, the nurturing support, the Rububiyet, is literally cut off. It uses a very stark metaphor, suggesting that a failure to reason results in pouring filth on those individuals.
Wow, that sounds incredibly punitive.
It does, but it's not literal dirt, and it's not a deity angrily throwing mud at someone. It means that by cutting off the nurturing support, the individual naturally sinks into an intellectual squalor of their own making. Think about modern society.
Right, I'm with you.
When people stop reading, stop critically evaluating the information they consume, they don't just stay neutral, they regress. They become susceptible to manipulation, anger, and confusion. That is the filth. If the golden formula of a plant was applied to the human mind, we would all automatically reach enlightenment just by existing and breathing air. But we don't, we have to build it.
That makes sense, but I'm not convinced that building it negates determinism. It just shifts the medium. There is a concept rooted in Quranic philosophy, specifically to Qur'an 29, which states that God willed for us to use our will.
Okay.
You cannot will unless the Lord of the worlds wills. This is a crucial mechanism. The requirement for us to exercise agency is in itself a programmed mandate.
So you're saying our free will is forced upon us?
Exactly. Isn't the requirement to make a choice just another embedded cosmic law? Much like the plant's golden formula dictates how it processes sunlight, the formula embedded in the human condition dictates that we must process information through free will.
I see the parallel you're drawing.
Right, so we are deterministically programmed to be creatures of choice. When we fail to choose, the natural consequence, the filth of ignorance you described, is just the cosmic machinery functioning exactly as designed. It is penalizing a malfunction.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. If our free will were merely an illusion running on a deterministic track, the whole concept of betrayal that is so heavily emphasized falls apart.
How so?
You cannot betray a system if you are just a broken gear within it. A broken gear isn't immoral, it's just defective. But an unutilized mind is viewed not as a mechanical failure, but as a moral tragedy. It is an active, conscious rejection of the Tedbiryay. But if you want to talk about physical mechanics, let's look at the physical boundaries of the universe versus metaphysical speeds, because this is where the deterministic argument really breaks down for me.
Go on. Because to me, the physical boundaries are the ultimate proof of absolute subjugation. We talked about the speed of light earlier. It is the strict upper limit for physical matter.
Right, 300,000 kilometers per second.
Yes, light goes 300,000 kilometers per second simply because it received a specific command to do so. If it hadn't received that command, how would light know how fast to travel? It wouldn't. This speed limit is undeniable proof that the entire physical universe is subjugated to a single, authoritative command.
It is a physical limit, yes. But the paradigm makes a dramatic pivot right after establishing that limit. And it completely shatters the deterministic ceiling. It introduces the concept of human consciousness, asking what is faster than light?
Faster than light?
Yes. The speed of the mind, the speed of consciousness, and the speed of faith. are vastly faster than light. Have you heard of the concept of psychons?
The theoretical particle of consciousness? I've heard the term, but how does it actually bypass physical reality? If it's a particle, shouldn't it obey physical laws?
Well, it's conceptualized more as a relational fabric. Just as photons mediate the transfer of light across space-time, these psychons mediate human connection and consciousness across space and time. But they don't carry mass, so they aren't bound by the space-time speed limit.
Oh, interesting.
They operate on a frequency of meaning. There is a beautifully relatable example used in the text. If you miss someone, they missed you. It argues that minds and hearts communicate instantaneously.
Like a shared intuition?
Exactly. If a mother senses her child is in danger 1,000 miles away and feels a sudden pang of dread, that isn't a photon traveling from the child to the mother. That is a metaphysical reality operating instantaneously, faster than physics. This proves that the ultimate reality isn't the cold, hard, deterministic physics of the universe, but the metaphysical, relational, and highly participatory realm of human consciousness. Our minds transcend the deterministic program.
But do we really transcend it, or are we just operating on a different, faster tier of the same program? I hear what you're saying about the speed of consciousness, and it's a beautiful sentiment. However, we have to contextualize human existence within the scale this philosophy provides, and it aggressively shrinks our perceived autonomy.
How so?
It asks us to consider our place in the universe. We have one sun. Next to our sun, the Earth is like a microbe next to a football. And then we zoom out to the 400 billion galaxies in the observable universe.
It's humbling for sure.
We are talking about a crushing scale of mathematical precision. In the face of that staggering machinery, the idea that our emotional connections or our internal development somehow break the rules of the macro system seems, well, wildly anthropocentric.
You think it's arrogant to assume we matter that much?
I think it misses the point of the scale. That scale is meant to induce reverence. It is meant to make us realize that the authority governing those 400 billion galaxies is the exact same authority governing the microfactory of a leaf balancing the Earth's oxygen and carbon dioxide.
Right.
Every atom is accounted for. The speed of thought might be faster than the speed of light, but the consciousness itself is still being nurtured and governed by the same central authority. It's just a faster metric, not an escape hatch from the system.
I agree that it's not an escape from the system. The authority remains central. But the nature of that system changes fundamentally when it encounters the human mind. The ultimate goal of all this cosmic architecture, the 400 billion galaxies, the precision of the leaf's oxygen production, the predictable recycling of the rotting apple, they are all just a stage set.
A stage set?
Yes. They are the scaffolding for the real drama, which is Tedbiryay.
So the entire universe exists just so we can learn?
Essentially, yes. The universe runs on reliable deterministic reals so that human beings have a stable environment in which to exercise the terrifying freedom of choice. God uses authority to nurture and train humans, not simply to enjoy commanding them like a cosmic puppet master.
Okay, I see.
Think about the historical mechanism of prophets. If the universe was just a deterministic clockwork, God wouldn't need to send thousands of prophets, which is framed as the ultimate act of divine labor and patience. You don't send the teacher to a pre-programmed washing machine to tell it how to wash clothes.
That's a great analogy.
Right? You send a teacher to a consciousness that has the capacity to fail, to learn, and to choose.
I see your point. The presence of a teacher implies a need for correction and guidance, which obviously implies the possibility of deviation. But I would argue that even this deviation is accounted for in the grand design. When people are handed a capacity and return it at 0 kilometers, you call it a betrayal. I call it a localized failure that the macro system effortlessly metabolizes.
Metabolizes how?
If the universe's ultimate purpose is to serve as a testing ground for this Tedbiryay, then the rigid deterministic laws of physics are the walls of the classroom. They are absolute. You cannot negotiate with gravity.
True.
You cannot negotiate with the speed of light. And ultimately, you cannot negotiate with the consequences of ignoring your intellect.
the mechanism that cuts off divine support when you fail to reason that plunging into intellectual squalor is just as automatic, precise, and deterministic as the leaf conducting photosynthesis.
I think where we fundamentally differ is on the texture of that consequence. You see the cutting off of support as a mechanical penalty, like a circuit breaker tripping in a cosmic fuse box. I see it as a relational withdrawal.
What is the difference? The result is the same.
The mechanism is entirely different. Consider the phrasing used. They forgot God, so God forgot them. That is not a mechanical equation. That is a relationship breaking down. It's mutual estrangement.
I hadn't thought of it like that.
And conversely, it says, if you remember me, I remember you. That instantaneous connection, that mirroring of affection and attention is the very essence of Rububiyet. It's not just a ruler enforcing laws, it's a sustainer, engaging in a dynamic, responsive dialogue with its creation. The physical universe might be the walls of the classroom, but the actual education is entirely interactive and dependent on our willingness to sit at the desk, open the book, and learn.
It is a remarkable duality to consider. On one hand, we have this awe-inspiring, almost terrifying scale of deterministic order, a universe where the exact ratio of oxygen and carbon dioxide is managed while we sleep by billions of silent, leafy microfactories. A universe steeped in profound teleology, where absolutely everything has a specific end goal. Nothing is random. The falling of a leaf, the scent of a rose, the orbit of planets, they all execute a flawless command. It is a cosmic program of unparalleled precision.
And on the other hand, set against the backdrop of that flawless machinery is the heavy, fragile burden of human potential. The entire divine order culminates in this vulnerable process of nurturing. We are given the unique freedom to transcend physical limits through conscious connection, or to leave our intellects in the box unused and sink into a chaos of our own making. We are the one wild variable in an otherwise perfect equation.
It's a fascinating synthesis, whether one views the overarching system as a strictly deterministic program naturally penalizing our errors, or our participatory framework dynamically responding to our choices. This philosophy undeniably transforms how we view the physical world around us. It argues convincingly that absolutely nothing is without meaning.
Exactly. It forces you to look at the mundane with a deep sense of intentionality.
Which brings us back to where we started. The next time you see a dried leaf, a gazelle, falling to the ground in autumn, you have to ask yourself a question. Are you just watching gravity pull dead organic matter to the dirt? Or are you witnessing the precise, deliberate closing of a microscopic factory perfectly timed within a universe of 400 billion galaxies, silently demanding that you too fulfill the potential you were built for? There is certainly much more to explore here regarding how we balance the immutable laws of nature with the active realization of our own consciousness. Thank you for listening to The Debate.
This is the brief on the Islamic concept of divine purpose and nurturing. We're looking at scholar Mustafa İslamoğlu's lecture on the divine name Rab, the sustainer. He shows us why absolutely everything, from a rotting piece of fruit to human consciousness, is built with profound intention rather than random chaos. First, meaning and purpose are the oldest laws in the universe, predating gravity, or E=mc². You know, even decay isn't chaos. When an apple rots, bacteria follow a precise law to return it to its source. So what if we stop looking at decay as random destruction and start seeing it as the ultimate, divinely scheduled recycling program? Second, human potential relies on this same divine nurturing, or Tedbiryay. But our abilities aren't just guaranteed at birth. If a baby is blindfolded for its first 6 months, it literally loses the ability to learn to see. And an isolated child will never learn to speak. We know physical muscles atrophy without use, but it makes you wonder, if we don't actively engage with our own spiritual and mental limits, are we just leaving our greatest potential in the box? Finally, just look at the flawless nurturing in nature. Jasmine, sage, and roses can grow side by side in the exact same dirt, yet produce completely unique scents using their own internal golden formulas. Every single leaf operates as a tiny oxygen factory working for free. Think about it. A flower stem holds a microscopic chemistry lab that outsmarts our best technology. How can we ignore the grand design happening right under our noses? Ultimately, recognizing this flawless design in a simple fallen leaf challenges us to stop living on autopilot and actively fulfill our own divine purpose. This is the brief on the Islamic concept of divine order and the title of Rab. Today we're going to distill a lecture by Mustafa İslamoğlu about how God's role as the ultimate sustainer actually shapes the profound purpose, balance, and intellect within our universe. First, let's look at order in decay. You know, in our universe, even breaking down is a strictly governed law, not just random chaos. Take a rotting apple, for example. It isn't chaotic destruction, it's simply bacteria breaking it down to return it to its origins. Think of decay not as the end, but as a perfectly managed cosmic recycling program. Honestly, human actions are what actually cause chaos when we decide to step outside this natural order. Second, let's talk about the law of purpose and pairs. Well before physical laws like gravity even existed, the law of purpose and meaning was already established. Plus, literally everything created exists in pairs. Positive and negative, male and female, this world and the afterlife. Only God is singular. So if everything in creation requires a counterpart to be understood, what does that actually mean for our own daily struggles between good and bad? Finally, let's dive into the true meaning of Rab and our intellect. God's authority as Lord of the worlds isn't about arbitrary power. It's really about being a nurturer or an educator. Because of this, God gave humans free will and intellect. If we don't use those capacities, we're kind of keeping our minds at 0 miles, which is a betrayal of that divine trust. I mean, are we guilty of leaving our God-given mental capacities parked in the garage, completely unused? Ultimately, recognizing the universe's flawless design challenges us to actively use our intellect and embrace our place within this grand, purposeful education. This is the brief on the Islamic concept of divine order and the title of Rab. Today we're going to distill a lecture by Mustafa İslamoğlu about how God's role as the ultimate sustainer actually shapes the profound purpose, balance, and intellect within our universe. First, let's look at order in decay. You know, in our universe, even breaking down is a strictly governed law, not just random chaos. Take a rotting apple, for example. It isn't chaotic destruction, it's simply bacteria breaking it down to return it to its origins. Think of decay not as the end, but as a perfectly managed cosmic recycling program. Honestly, human actions are what actually cause chaos when we decide to step outside this natural order. Second, let's talk about the law of purpose and pairs. Well before physical laws like gravity even existed, the law of purpose and meaning was already established. Plus, literally everything created exists in pairs. Positive and negative, male and female, this world and the afterlife. Only God is singular. So if everything in creation requires a counterpart to be understood, what does that actually mean for our own daily struggles between good and bad? Finally, let's dive into the true meaning of Rab and our intellect. God's authority as Lord of the worlds isn't about arbitrary power. It's really about being a nurturer or an educator. Because of this, God gave humans free will and intellect. If we don't use those capacities, we're kind of keeping our minds at 0 miles, which is a betrayal of that divine trust. I mean, are we guilty of leaving our God-given mental capacities parked in the garage, completely unused? Ultimately, recognizing the universe's flawless design challenges us to actively use our intellect and embrace our place within this grand, purposeful education.